All I know is that every animal that has come through my place, whether they've survived or not, has made a mark on my heart.
If you give them a chance and show them love and are patient and talk to them and they'll listen to you and you listen to them, they'll all become your best friends. And it's amazing what they give to you is more than we ever really give to them.
Woof, woof, woof. I'm Shaw, and it's Feel Good, Share Goods Real Talk tonight. And we are talking about animal rescue, its benefits for animals, the people, and the planet. And it's going to be a oink of a show tonight, perhaps. And I just want to welcome everybody who's joining us for this powerful discussion on animal rescue. There's been some incredibly sad things happening recently in the animal rescue world. And from street dogs to wildlife, we're going to explore how rescuing animals brings out the best in people, but sometimes the worst as well. Before you tell me how you got into animal rescue, I just want to know about the animal crews that are at your house right now. So, Leanne, you were talking about, I saw a little new puppy that you've gotten. Well, he's quite big because of the type of dog he is. And you were saying, Clyde is not going to be allowed on the couches. And about 2 weeks later, I see pictures of Clyde lounging on the couch.
Waiting for his cocktail. Yes, Clyde is a 4-month-old Great Dane puppy. He's was a gift from a client of mine, actually, who heard that my adult Dane passed away in June. So he called my husband and asked if he told me his sister raises championship Great Danes and he would like to gift me one. So here we have him. I don't think he's going to be a champion. He's very misbehaved. And then I have 2 rescues from here. One I found in a pothole about a month after I moved to Mexico, actually. So he's been with us for 5 years. And then we have another rescue that we found in a tire yard that had burned down, and the people who operated tire yard abandoned the dogs. So I took all the dogs, got them all adopted. Little Seamus is a bit of a weirdo, so he stayed here. And then I also have generally 2 to 3 other dogs in the house that are transitioning from the street to a forever home. So we bring them in, we get them neutered or spayed, we vaccinate them, we get them back to health. And then we generally send them up to San Diego, where we have a partner, Woofs and Wags, and they get the dogs adopted into forever homes there. We've not had any dogs come back, luckily. And sometimes I just had a puppy this summer who got adopted by a nice American family here in La Paz. So sometimes they do find local homes as well.
Do you think a lot of these street dogs are related to each other?
A lot of them are. Definitely the 3 that I brought in last summer were all related, even though they were from a different area. They all looked identical. But I don't know if you knew this, but a female dog can have, one litter could have several different fathers. So a German Shepherd mother could have a puppy that looks just like a Chihuahua. So it's hard. Yeah. I didn't know that either until I started getting very involved with rescue here. I was always involved in rescue in Canada, but we don't have the same scope as we do here, where there's 60,000 street dogs on the street of La Paz, for example. So, but yeah, a female dog can have multiple partners. And
well,
the dad's in a litter.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Little shocking fact right off the top of the show. Lisa, tell us about your crew. You have dogs, but you also have a few other interesting animals on the
Yes, I've rescued a whistle duck, if y'all are familiar with them. We have them come on our pond every year and they whistle. It's precious sound. And they abandoned their chicks, and a couple of the cats got the others, and we went into the pond and got this one and raised her since she's just a baby chick. Well, she is now with some very big mallards, and she's real small, and she rules the roost. She bosses them around and she stays with them. And we've had some of the whistle ducks come to tell her, let's go. And she kind of looks at them, and but she stays with her crew. There's 6 of them,
Oh,
and she raised them since they were babies, but they're gigantic. Anyway, she's a rescue. Then we have a huge 600-pound pig. He was going to be used for, I guess, meat. And the little girl cried and said, I know you'll keep him. I said, oh, yeah. So his name is Gunner. He's huge and a big teddy bear. You can lay on his tummy and pet him, and he's huge, but he's a good pig. He's a really good pig. Of course, dogs and cats and all the dogs. You say street dogs. Well, we live in the country, and everyone, when they don't want their dogs, they just kind of dump them on the road. And my dogs go down there and say, you can come up there and the lady will take care of you.
oh.
And that's how I end up with all these dogs. So we have them and geese
a little
and ducks. Yeah, they probably do have a sign saying, come this way. But I tell them they just have to all get along and they
Mhm.
have to listen to me. And they do. They do. They all get along and they listen to Mimi. So they're great dogs. And as soon as it's kind of like God knows, as soon as one passes from old age, another will come. Will just show up at the gate. And it's just it's kind of neat. Anything that needs to be rescued, we'll do it. We'll take care of it.
Leanne, have you always been interested and sort of drawn to animals and helping them?
Yes, and apparently I get that from my mother, who was like Dr. Doolittle. She seemed to be able to talk to animals. Uh, my husband just said, I like him. Big silly. Yes, I have always been into animals of all types. I did own cats in university, but pretty much have had dogs all my life. But I will rescue anything too. I've rescued raccoons and I've rescued baby skunks and chipmunks and ducks, lots and lots of ducks. We used to have a house that backed onto a ravine and we had a swimming pool, and a mom came every year for 6 years and laid her ducklings in a planter on my terrace, and they couldn't get out of my yard, and they couldn't
I
get out
see
of
videos like that. That's so
Yeah.
cute.
And so the first year we lost a few of the ducklings because she brought them right to the pool, and then they couldn't get out, and so she left them. And I would scoop them out and try and get them to come over the fence into the creek, but she would leave them. But eventually we figured out that I would just have to stay up all night long and wait for her to hop off the nest, and I would gather them all up really quickly before they would hop off and put them in a cooler. And when the light come up, I'd go across a 4-lane boulevard over to the pond, and she'd follow along. Every summer she came. But normally I would have to end up calling Humane Society to come and take them because she would invariably leave a couple behind. So that went on till we sold that house. And then we moved to a neighborhood closer to the lake, and it seemed like someone was always calling me the duck lady. So I would go to other people's yards and gather ducklings, so that was kind of fun. And then I also in Canada worked for an organization that was like the Underground Railroad. So they would rescue these dogs out of high kill shelters in the States. And everyone would do an hour or two of driving from the shelter to the new either a rescue or a home. So I always picked them up at the border in Niagara Falls and would drive them as far east as Ajax. So, 3-hour drive. And I did that for 7 or 8 years until we moved here. It's a lot of dogs coming across the border. And then I got down here and we discussed it before we came. My husband's like, you're going to end up with a house full of dogs. And I go, I know. And we did. It was like maybe a week after we moved here that we found Diego. And he was in a really bad way. He had distemper. He was in danger of losing both his eyes. He had mange. He had been in a fight, so he was all beat up. And we were living in a condo at the time that we were renting while our house was being built, so we couldn't take him. So I talked a friend into keeping him for me until we moved into another property that we could take him in. So that's what happened. He came home with us. We drove home that spring and picked up Ellie, our Great Dane, and brought her back with us. And then it's just been a revolving door. And a lot of dogs that I can't take in. I'll be showing clients houses 2 hours in the middle of nowhere. They want a secluded beachfront, and we're driving back and we see a car stop and throw whole litters of puppies out on the road. So
Oh, no.
yeah, we're picking puppies up, and I'm like, I don't have anywhere to have a whole litter of puppies. So you call around and you find someone else to take one, or someone can take all of them, and then I'll still spend money to get them vetted, but we just need temporary homes. I'm very much like Lisa. I live on a street where a lot of people will just abandon dogs because the gringos will take care of the dogs. And they seem to know to show up to our gate. And I think it's our dogs because they can see out on the street. They're like, hey, you get over here. My mom has food. So yes, we end up with lots. And my guys have been very good about it. Sometimes it takes them a little longer to warm up, but generally they're good. They know that they were worse with my puppy, who they knew wasn't a needy dog. So they gave him a hard time for a month or two. But most dogs that come sick or malnourished, they seem to know, and they're just very nurturing to them. So, but the big thing I do here is volunteer with a free spay and neuter clinic that we put on every month. Because PETA has come up with a statistic that a single female dog and her subsequent litters can produce up to 67,000 dogs in 6 years. So one dog being spayed can really take a cut out of the street dog situation. And we're doing about 100 a month in our major campaigns. And then we do mini campaigns where we'll go to a ranch. A rancher will say, hey, I've got 12 dogs that, have been hanging around. Can you come spay or neuter them? And it's just really snowballed. And Mexican people do love their dogs. People think they don't take care of them. It's true. They have a different way of taking care of them, a lot of them, than we do. They feed them, they love them, but they don't let them in the house. They don't contain them in the yards. They don't spay and neuter for the most part, especially men do not want to neuter a male dog. It's taking, you be quiet. It's taken a while, but they're going into the schools and they're educating the children, and they're going home and educating their parents. And it's amazing to see these people with nothing. We go into the very underserved communities of La Paz, people that have nothing. They don't have a car to be able to get to the vet, let alone money to take them to the vet. They'll show up with their dogs in a wheelbarrow or a wagon or a broken down stroller. And they may have 5 or 6 dogs that they bring in, and they're fussing over them like they're their children. And they're worried about them as they're in recovery, and they're watching them still under anesthesia. And it's really heartwarming to see. So we've done about 7,000 dogs in the past 4.5 years.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah. And we continue to do more, and it costs $25 a dog. to sterilize. We do it at no cost to the dog owners. So we work strictly on donations and volunteers. We do have to pay the vets for their time, but they work with all of their time and their materials and their medications for $25 per dog. So it's really worthwhile. And it's the best day of my month is the last Sunday of every month that I go and work that clinic.
And what's
So
do you have the website?
we do. It's called BajaDogsSterilizations.org. So we're legally able to fundraise and give tax credits to donors. You can
Oh,
donate
perfect.
from anywhere, but if you're in the US or Mexico, you can get a tax receipt.
Excellent. And Lisa, quickly, tell us why you got into rescuing. Was it something you did from childhood?
We grew up on a farm in Brenham, Texas. It's not too far from here, a couple of hours. And I too rescued baby skunks. We had one named Stinky Poo, and a raccoon that I raised until I knew it was time for him to leave. He used to wash his sardines with his little hands because he didn't like the oil on them. And I handed him a sardine one day and he bit my finger and I said, "It's time for you to go." So, but he used to come back and visit. And I had a coyote. I raised a baby coyote that was left stranded from his mom, and his name was Rascal. He came back to visit, but we let them go into the wild if we can, if they, don't want to stay. Armadillos and possums, Laurel and Hardy were the possums. So we just, and horses, cows. I have two horses. I forgot to mention them, Daisy and Pluto, and their rescues. He had Cushing's, and that's difficult. And what I was going to say is, it is expensive. It's expensive to have animals. They're a lifetime commitment. They're a lifetime commitment. And Patrick and I, we don't go on vacations and we don't have boats and things like that because our discretionary income is for the animals. But we've chosen that, it's a lifestyle that we've chosen, that the extra goes to the animals. And I wouldn't have it any other way because they're my family, and my grandsons love animals, and hopefully that seed has been planted in them to help animals that need help. There's not one that I could even consider turning away. If something needs help, I'm going to climb a tree at this age and go get it. And they're learning that. So yes, I've been all my life been an advocate of helping critters, creatures, insects, lizards. I just, any of God's creatures, I think are worth saving.
And with that, it's a great segue to what I wanted to talk about tonight, because I said I would lead with it, but I decided not to, is the tragic loss of life when it comes to just some ignorance, perhaps, regulation, bureaucracy, those types of things. And recently there was Peanut the squirrel and his pal, Fred the raccoon, that were stripped from the loving arms of the people that had brought them in as babies, like they were domesticated. A domesticated squirrel and a domesticated raccoon, and the Department of Conservation was called by I'm going to say probably a nosy neighbor who was concerned that these animals were being used as a way to make money on the internet because they had an Instagram page, but they were a nonprofit that were showing the squirrel and showing the raccoon doing what they do. It's like any of the videos that you watch. I watch a lot of dog rescue, but I watch a lot of, if they have a reel with an animal on it, I'm watching. Right. So this just recently happened, and the regulators, or the Department of Conservation, came in. They basically detained the people so they couldn't do anything. And they searched and scoured their farm for this squirrel and raccoon and took them and actually gassed them, euthanized them to check them for rabies. And this isn't the only
Oh,
story. This is just the most recent story. I'm sure you guys have heard of Freya, the walrus in Norway,
Oh, yeah.
was, had gotten off course, right? Should have been somewhere completely different, but ended up, outside of this, maybe in a fjord, I don't know, it was this town, and there was boats, and this Freya would get up, like, maybe 1,000-pound walrus, and would sink boats, and and it was, people were gawking, and there was people coming from all over the place, and they decided to end her life, the authorities in Norway. And there's lots and lots of stories. If you go to Google and you find this, I want to know what you guys think of wildlife being domesticated from an early age, and then the government stepping in and saying, oh no, and killing the animal who only knew love and joy and human bonding and interaction, and weren't a problem. They weren't a threat. They're just loving little animals. It's like having a cat or a dog. These animals can be domesticated. I mean, you all talked about wildlife that you've brought into your homes and domesticated. What do you guys think about this? Who wants to go first?
I wouldn't let them on my property. And maybe it's because I'm a Texan, but they wouldn't ever get my animals without going through me. And that's just the way I feel. That's just the way I feel. I wouldn't let it happen. I wouldn't let it happen. That's horrible.
It
That
is
is
horrible.
horrible.
It is. I know in Ontario, it's illegal for anyone other than a licensed wildlife rehabilitator to actually take a wild animal. Everyone does it. But if you're caught, it's huge fines and jail time, and they will take the animal. And yes, they'll go test them for rabies. And the only way to do that, as you know, is to euthanize it and test their brain. So it gets to a point where you don't let anyone know that you have a baby, anything. So
Yeah, I was thinking there's a lot of videos on Instagram of people with these domesticated wildlife critters, and I would be shutting my channel down to protect the animal. I would just throw away the key.
I know it's unconscionable, really, and I sort of understand the thought behind it, but at the same time, all of the licensed rescue organizations or rehabilitators are always full in the spring because baby raccoons, baby skunks, they always seem to find a place for the baby deers. But the little baby rodents, or whatever you want to call them, they're full. And basically they say, well, we'll come get him, but it'll be euthanized, or leave it where it is, let nature take its course. That's the big one. And I'm like, no, I'm not leaving something out there to get eaten. Or freeze to death or starve to death. I mean, they're hairless little squirrels at this point. Sorry.
Aren't we here to be good stewards to the planet?
Exactly.
And its population, and we're not doing a very good job of this. If somebody went and collected all the street dogs and euthanized them, would you be a little bit pissed?
Yeah, and that happens, unfortunately. I have a hard time opening my Facebook feed in the morning, because it's inundated with pictures and videos of really sick dogs, starving dogs, a dog that was run over and left on the side of the road, but it's still alive, or really healthy dogs that have decided to set up their home outside of a OXXO, like 7-Eleven, and the employees are actually feeding them and caring for them and have provided a little shelter for them, and the authorities come and, because one person complains, and takes them away to be euthanized. It's the one aspect of living in Mexico that I don't think I'll ever get used to is how little disregard there is for life. For even humans, really. I mean, on a certain economic, social scale, you may as well not exist.
Yeah,
And
we all have, we, all of us here, and I'm sure people that are listening to this show, all have this thing called compassion, right? And I think that's why we gravitate towards helping and rescuing animals and feeding birds. And, you know, I've rescued a rattlesnake, a baby rattlesnake who got caught in a net on the farm. You know, I clipped it off, and I've got this rattlesnake in my my hands, not afraid, which just blows my mind, because I'm more afraid of what happens to that animal as you watch it die because it's caught in this net. I've seen a couple of snakes caught in nets from in the farm area and stuff like that. So the first one was I watched what this guy did. He just took it by the head, and so it wasn't going to bite him, and he just started clipping the net off, and then just worked his way around the net and got rid of the net, and then let the snake go. So I just recreated that. I've had birds I've had to rescue. John is known for rescuing ducks as well. He had to actually, we were walking along this path on this creek bed, and it was very rocky, right, from the walkway down to the creek. And he looked over and he just happened to notice this duck's butt in the air. And the duck was stuck. Its head was stuck between two rocks. He'd probably been diving for stuff and, whatever he's eating. And he couldn't get his head out. And John scrambled down this precarious bank and pulled the duck. And I was and let it go. And I'm like, like the duck rescuer. And I was so excited. I didn't have a camera, so I didn't get, there's lots of things like that you just don't get pictures of. But so we have this compassion, but it seems that there's a lot of people that have a darker side to them and they neglect and abuse animals. Why do you think these extremes exist, and especially around animal welfare?
Most of the time, I believe that they were abused and neglected and weren't taught to think of something before themselves, to be a caregiver of sorts. And it's important for all human beings to know how to be a caregiver of other humans, of other creatures, and when we can.
Since the topic is in animals, and I always used to get from people that you care more for animals than you care for children, or why would you spend all that money when there's so many children that need food, and so there's always that divine balance where each of us chooses where to put their money, right, or put their time. But Siobhan, to get into that and leave you ladies with my thoughts, there's just so many bad people out there, but there's also many good people. And what happens is if we all do our part and we just put a little piece of that love, of that money, then we just become better humans. And like you said, if it's just picking up that little squirrel, like our friends here, or a lot of the times, just like with child abuse, and the same thing with animal abuse, if you just want to put sometimes the word out there of what really is truly happening out there. And I think the most important thing is not turning our head to know that we do live like in a perfect world. And so because I am not as involved as before, or not involved at all, to not be a hypocrite, but I do speak out and just I don't close my there's a lot of Instagram pages that show the bad side, and I'm still in them just because I want to keep myself reminded that I don't want to just live like I have this perfect life when they're abusing so many animals. And sometimes I force myself to just once at least a month to open the pages that say, be careful because the content that you will see, you're not going to like. And I just open it so I can remind myself that I need to not be the one that turns her head and talk like you ladies do. So that's my invitation. It's not about becoming all of us vegan and not eating meat because we have abuse with our that's another topic for another day. But right,
Okay.
like if we're going into uh I'm a distributor of transfer factors, so I get this a lot because we use cow colostrum to produce our product that it's my business and my job and how I plan to live the next 20 years of my life. And people were like, don't you know they're abusing cows? So again, not to close with a bad thing, but actually on a good thing, which is animals and humans, we can live in harmony. And God did put these animals there for us to care for, to manage them, the Bible says. So we just need to remember that they were put there for consumption as well, but for us to love them and care for them. And it's a balance. It's the balance of life.
Do you guys have any final comments that or words of advice for people, heartwarming stories or something that you want to share? Leanne?
Heartwarming stories. Well, all I know is that every animal that has come through my place, whether they've survived or not, has made a mark on my heart. And I think that if you can in any way be involved with helping an animal, any way at all, and any kind of animal, I think your life will be enriched by it.
Lisa?
Gather people around you that also love life and love animals. And if you give them a chance, they can be the most grouchiest animal. If you give them a chance and show them love and are patient and talk to them, and they'll listen to you and you listen to them, they'll all become your best friends. And it's amazing what they give to you is more than we ever really give to them. They give back, and it's a beautiful experience.
You guys are doing an amazing job standing up for the animals and their freedom and their good life. And thank you for all you do. I mean, from bottom of my heart, just knowing that there's people like you out there just fighting the good fight every day. It's amazing. And especially on this Veterans and Remembrance Day, where, there's a lot of people that have sacrificed for our freedoms so that we can own and steward animals and take care of animals. I couldn't imagine a world without being able to do that. And it's thanks to members of our families that have gone before us, that have served in the world wars and fought for our freedom. So I want to say thank you to both of you and to Claudia. And this has been Feel Good, Share Goods, Real Talk. And this is the place where you get real to heal. We'll see everybody later. Bye.